This is Wealthy AF, your ultimate guide to understand what it truly means to be wealthy AF. And today's guest is Kristal DeSantis. That's my Spanish accent that keeps coming up, DeSantis. And born into a multiracial bicultural family in Asia, she developed an insatiable curiosity about customs and cultures of relationships as she traversed between different societies. Everywhere she went, she observed and questioned how people fell in love, stayed in love, and sought hints as to what made healthy relationships thrive. This, coupled with her own journey to love, she met her husband, eventually led her into the field of marriage and family therapy and to the pursuit of her master's degree and licensure as a marriage and family therapist. Kristal, welcome, my dear.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad that you're here. This is a great topic we're going to be talking about today. Do you need to go to couples therapy? No, so people may be thinking, well, podcast is Wealthy AF. What are you talking about couples? We talk about masculinity, politics here. We talk about all kinds of things. Well, wealth is not just about money. It's about relationships, health, spirituality. Wealth, it encompasses a full spectrum of things. I believe that true wealth, human beings are truly at their best when they're fully connected with another human being. As you know, as my listeners know, I've been married for 22 years. Been with my wife for 28 years. Yeah, 28 years. So I know the importance of this. So let's get right into it. So tell us your story. I mean, biracial, multicultural family, Asia, and what? So you were born, what was the other side? You're a very beautiful woman, so I'm trying to figure out, where's the other side? I see the Asian, but I'm trying to figure out the other side.
So the other side is Italian-Irish.
Italian-Irish, okay.
My dad is American from Boston, and so he was the Italian-Irish, and my mom is Asian. She's Chinese ethnically, and they lived in Japan. So I was raised in Japan. So that's where, multicultural, multiracial, all living in the same house.
I can imagine, man. It must be fun to be your Thanksgiving for sure.
Yeah, we have a lot of food cultures. But yeah, so But part of that is I ended up kind of being what's called a third culture kid. I was never fully Asian, right? So mixed race, never quite fully Asian. Also, I was raised speaking English and going to an American school. But then when I would come visit America, I never felt fully American either. So I was kind of between cultures. And it really made me an observer of the way people interact, not just in romantic relationships, but in friendships. And when I moved to the U.S. to go to college, again, I was just trying to understand how relationships developed, whether it was friendships, work colleagues, or romantic relationships. And yeah, so, I was just trying to figure it out. Being between cultures, I think it makes you very aware of, things that maybe people that are in the culture are not exactly aware of.
Got it. So what led you into the field of going into this pursuit of therapy, marriage counseling?
Yeah, honestly, it was because I met my husband on a dating app and I realized that, oh gosh, I really like this guy, but I don't know how to do healthy relationships. My parents, they were very good parents to me, but they did not have the best relationship with each other. So I didn't really learn how people sustained a long-term romantic relationship in a healthy way. I knew a lot of people that had been married for many years, but, that didn't really tell me about what they did to be successful in actually having a happy, healthy, long-term marriage. It's just, they have kids together, they have a house together, they just didn't get divorced. And, now it's 40 years later. And I saw a lot of unhappy older couples when I was growing up, or people, friends, parents who, sure, they were in a long-term marriage, but it didn't feel like the kind of relationship that I necessarily wanted. So anyways, I met my husband on a dating app and I realized I didn't have the skills to do a relationship. So I went to therapy. And my therapist was a marriage and family therapist. And so then I realized, I can learn this. These are skills. I can read about it. I can learn about it. And then eventually, I wanted to share what I've learned with others. So became a marriage and family therapist. in 2014. So I've been doing this for 10 years. And last year I wrote my book. And, I just want to share what I've learned with other people because it's made a huge difference in my life. I've been with my husband for 14 years as well. And yeah.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. You mentioned some things. There's a lot to unpack there. You said there were people that were married for 40 years. You've met people that were older, not happy, right? But they just never got divorced. They just decided to stick together. And then you said you were looking for strategies, and I'm paraphrasing, that's not the words you used, but you were kind of looking for strategies to how to stay how to stay in a relationship that's sustainable and you're fulfilled and happy, again, paraphrasing, long term. What did you learn about that? What are those things that hold the marriage sustainable and happy in the long run?
Yeah. So, it really is, it starts with setting up a really solid foundation. Because as you said, with this podcast, one of the pieces of research I found when I was writing my book is the Harvard study about the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life, right? Mm-hmm. And the better you are at maintaining and protecting and building your relationships, whether that's with your partner, having a support system that you can rely on to support you emotionally when things get tough, be as an entrepreneur, being in business, you need somebody who has your back. It's a huge difference for your mental health, for your emotional well-being, for your resilience, to have that partner at home who believes in you, who supports you, who is able to emotionally, hold you up when you're not feeling your best. And then also in business relationships, being able to have a successful negotiation, successful collaboration. These are all relationship communication conflict skills, right? And so I guess it really just, it made me, so what I did is, I wrote my book and I created my practice called Strong.
The name of the book is Strong. Okay.
Yeah. It's Strong, a relationship field guide for the modern man, because I really wanted to focus on helping men.
Let's talk about that, baby. Yes.
But, it really is a strength-based approach, right? So what I learned is setting up a strong foundation really then gives you the skills for long-term success, no matter where you end up in life, 10 years down the line, 12 years, 15, 40 years, you got to start with a strong foundation.
Yeah. So what strategies would you say are necessary? Like, what are some of the things, give us some meat and potatoes, right? What would some of those things be that keep a relationship strong, healthy, vibrant over the long haul?
Yeah. So Strong, I break it down as an acronym. So the first three are essential to any relationship success: safety, trust, and respect. If you don't have those three, the relationship will just not survive. It's going to be constant conflict. It's going to be very toxic. If you don't feel safe with your partner, you don't trust them, or you don't respect them, you have a non-starter, right? So that's what I call kind of the relationship survival strategies, the STR. And then once you get that stabilized, coming into the long-term success, the thriving part of the relationship is ONG, openness, nurturing, and generosity. And these are the things to continue to cultivate so that you don't end up getting stagnant, so you don't end up becoming roommates. You don't end up just relying on, well, we trust each other, we feel safe with each other, we respect each other. It's what else are you doing to keep vibrancy in the relationship, to keep passion alive, to keep being generous and doing those little things for each other that make you feel, just that magic of being in love, which is, so many people, and this is one of the things I discovered as I was, becoming a marriage and family therapist and doing this research is, love is wonderful, but it's not enough to make a long-term relationship work. And love is not magic. A lot of it is really that intentional nurturing, intentional choices to put the relationship's needs before your own. And that's really what love in action is.
Tell us what that looks like, right? So how does for a man, because, look, I remember I'll share a quick story with you and my listeners, right? I had a woman therapist years ago too. So I was in my pool one day, and my wife comes over to me and she's like, I'm not happy, right? And I'm like, what is that? Right? A lot of times, Nina, you are a therapist, so we are clueless men, like especially younger men, we're clueless to what's happening in the marriage and emotionally with women. We don't see shit. Like, it's just like we're just blind sometimes. And that's what I was. She goes, I'm not happy. And I was like, why? And she said, it's not that you're doing something wrong, but it's what you're not doing. She was like, you agree to everything I want to do. I feel like you don't have your own ideas. You don't have your own backbone. You don't have your own. If I say, I want Chinese food, you say, even if you want Thai, you say, sure. If I say, I want to stay home and you want to go out, you say, sure. Whatever I want to do. She was like, I don't want to be in a relationship like that. I'm not happy. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Because I thought the old mantra of happy wife, happy life nonsense, that's nonsense. Total nonsense. Learned that the hard way, right? And so I was like, okay, so we decided to go to therapy. Right? So I started going to therapy. She went for the first session. And then she didn't go back. She was like, I'm not going back. You're the one that needs help, not me. So I kept going, right? Because at this point, I had already read a lot of books. I'm a reader. I'm into personal development. I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm into, growth. I had a growth mindset for a long time. But in this area, I was really missing, and I'm still growing in that area. So I kept going to this therapist, right? She tells me one day I'm sitting there with the therapist, and the therapist asked me a question, and she goes, hey, why should your wife respect you or love you or something like that? And I remember my answer. My answer was like, what do you mean, why? Don't you see she lives in this great big house. She has this nice car. She has all these things. And the therapist looked at me and she said, there's that 9-year-old boy coming out right there. She was like, isn't that what a man is supposed to do? Mm. Does a man need to say what he's doing when he's providing for his wife and his children? Isn't that what a man does? And boy, did I get pissed. I was so pissed. I left that place. I was like, I'm paying this lady, whatever, I'm paying $150, $200 an hour for her to tell me that. But something in my mind said to me, go back. There might be some truth there. And that was the moment for me where I realized, Kristal, for me, where like that I became a man. It was in that couch that I was like, holy crap, it hit me like I'm missing it. It was a woman that really sparked that for me.
I love hearing that.
Right.
Love that.
So what do you find, I wanted to share that because again, a lot of us men are emotional, like we miss it. Mm-hmm. So what would you say that a man can do to start building that muscle? Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is where I'm glad thank you for sharing that story, because that's so beautiful. That's so, I like hearing that because I think sometimes the stigma around therapy is exactly what you said, right? I'm just going to go in a room. This woman is going to tell me I'm wrong. She's going to tell me how bad I am and how men are the problem, blah, blah, blah. But, if you get a therapist like that, that's not the therapist, because ultimately a therapist is there to empower you to say, wait a minute, are you really living your full best life? Are you really inhabiting your full power? Mm-hmm. Are you really showing up in your integrity and being the kind of person that you want to be? If not, here are some skills, here are some tools, here's some support. And so that's really and this is why I named my book Strong, is because, so with safety, for instance, with men, a lot of men have been taught, right, that your goal in the relationship or in life is to be a protector and a provider, right? You got to keep.
That's important for us. That's important for us.
And so one of the things I wanted to do was continue to honor that, but just update it for the modern man, right? So what does it mean to be a protector in the relationship now? What does it mean to be a provider? Is it just about a paycheck, or can you provide emotional connection? Can you provide emotional stability? Can you provide emotional support? And then when it comes to protection, can you protect the relationship from, maybe your own worst instincts, right? Your own things that maybe the relationship needs some protection from. So with safety, that first S of the strong model, I break it down into 4 skills. Number 1, the skill of self-awareness, right? Like your wife said to you, like, do you even know what you want? Like, who even are you? Right?
Yeah.
Like she didn't want, it sounds like your wife didn't want just a yes man.
She wanted a male. She wanted a partner. She
Exactly.
wanted someone that had their own thoughts and an individual.
Exactly. And so that's the first S of safety is self-awareness. The second is stability, right? Which is kind of basic life skills. Maybe it's a trope, but I've seen a lot in couples therapy of, women feeling like they don't have partners simply because their partners, their men, don't have the basic life skills that they were taught, like, how to run the dishwasher, how to change the diapers, how to, make a meal for the kids. And that it just leads to a lack of respect, right? It's like if your partner doesn't have the same basic life skills that you do, it's going to be tough to run a household together, right? And then the last 2 S's, so the 4 S's of safety: self-awareness, stability, self-expression. So being able to talk about your feelings, being able to name, like if your wife's like, hey, how are you today? And you're like, good. And then the next day she's like, hey, what's going on today? Not so good. Your conversations can only stay at a really surface level. So self-expression, which is, again, skills, communication skills, learning language to talk about emotions, and then self-regulation. One of the things I've seen, especially working with, I work with a lot of first responders, a lot of veterans, is, being able to regulate your body when you're upset is an essential skill, and especially in business too, right? So if you're doing negotiations, being able to notice what's happening in your body so you can modulate. And actually elite athletes in the military, they teach this a lot with Navy SEALs, like box breathing. When you're in a stressful situation, how do you calm your body so you don't escalate the situation? And often what I saw when it came to couples in conflict is, when a man started getting angry, his partner started getting scared, right? And so if your partner is scared of you, even if you've never, done anything physical, having that kind of angry energy is a threatening energy. And so being able to kind of modulate, like when you're in conflict, how do you calm your body? So either taking a time out, doing some breathing exercises, learning to step away so that you can actually have the conversations that need to happen, but that they are productive and not just lead to another breakup or whatever.
Yeah, but how does what strategies can you give a man? Like I understand that. Like I get that. It's extremely important. Safety is important on both sides, right? For a man needs to feel safe to be able to come with his whatever thoughts or feelings or situation, because we're out there in the world and we're fighting the world and we're trying to fix things. That's how we're wired. We want to come home and we want to fix you too. You just tell us, hey, I have this thing, my pimple in my head. And you're like, oh God, let me go get you this, right? Sometimes women just want to be heard, right?
Yeah.
But how do we, as men, what kind of strategies can we as men create? I can share some of the things if you like, but I'd like to hear from you as men that we can create to create a safe environment for our spouses, because sometimes we don't know how to do that. And men, oftentimes we don't know, because of our masculine energy, how it comes across to the family when we're just expressing ourselves, or maybe we just are not expressing ourselves properly and we're just maybe talking a little bit too loud and our body language is a little bit too and we don't mean harm. We're just kind of expressing ourselves. What kind of strategies would you say? I know you mentioned box breathing, and how do you become self-aware on those things to navigate that?
Well, honestly, that's where maybe couples therapy or individual therapy comes in. Having somebody who is dedicated to helping you get to know yourself better. Because one of the things is learning your window of tolerance, right? We all have a window of tolerance for distress. And when you get to know yours, that's where also you can be a leader in these difficult conversations in your relationship. And I think that's one of the things I noticed, especially in couples, where a woman gets frustrated when she's like, I always have to be the one to start a difficult conversation, right? And so being a man in a relationship who could say, hey, I want to hear about your experience in this relationship. What am I doing as a partner? that is working for you? What am I doing that's not working for you? And really honestly getting that feedback. But it's very vulnerable, right? Because you can get really defensive.
And that's a tough one. I'll tell you, that was a hard one for me. That was a hard one for me because that was when my therapist told me. She said, you go to your wife and you ask her. And I was like, holy shit, I got to hear something. You got to hear it, right? But that's part of creating that safety.
Exactly.
It's creating that safe space. And now I've built the muscle where I tell her now. I used to be scared to go and ask. Like, it was a challenge for me. It was, my therapist would be like, okay, did you ask this week? I was like, no, because I was afraid of what I was going to hear. I was afraid of the feeling, right? I was going to get this feeling of like anguish because she's going to start pointing fingers. But this is why she didn't talk, and this is why she held it for so long.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's regular. Like, hey, babe, how we doing? Am I dropping the ball anywhere? Where are things? And now it's like, just bring it to me. Like, just give it to me. You don't got to worry about me and Ashley now. Just give it to me. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Just straight. Just shoot it straight with me. Tell me where it is, where you're at, and let's just unpack it. Right? I've created that space for her where it's just like, just give it to me.
Yeah. And again, that started with you. It sounds like doing your own work to be in a space where you could be open to hearing that. Right. So you could provide her with that safety of like, hey, I want to know how to love you better. I want to make your experience in this relationship better. Help me do that for you. Right.
Yeah. What I will tell you is that at the beginning, it was tough because I didn't have good communication skills. So that comes with communication skills. And what I will tell the men listening today is if you go and you do this strategy that Dr. Kristal here is sharing with you, if you go and you do the strategy and it's going to hurt, right? But what I will tell you is that it hurts because you can't articulate what the meaning, because we're meaning making machines as human beings. We make meaning that's not there. So I believe that intentions matter. I'm a big believer in intentions matter. So oftentimes my wife and I would have disagreements. We still do, where, hey, you did this, and I'm like, okay, babe, I thank you for sharing it, but let's unpack this. Let's unpack this,
Yeah. Yeah. And this is again so there's specific strategies that I use often in my work. And one of them is what I put in my book is the 4 positions of conversation. So it starts with listening, joining, fixing, and debating. And what I've noticed is that men are generally socialized to fix and debate, and that women are socialized to listen and join. And so just, I tell my clients, I said, just take a picture of this or photocopy it, put it on your fridge, because often if you can at least both be in the same position at the same time, right? So if your wife is like, hey, I'm trying to vent, and you immediately jump to, oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. You've lost her. Or if you're like, well, here, what you should do is, again, you've lost her because she's in position 1, you're in position 3.
Yeah.
So, I always say, like, let's break it down into strategy. Ask her, where do you want me to be? You want me to be at position 1? You want me to be at position 3? And that also, it's a collaborative thing. You're not trying to read her mind. It's just, put me where you want me to play. What position you want me to play, right? So that's one strategy that's very effective at communication. And the other one is I encourage people, if they're like, I don't even know where to start, like, how do I check in with my partner? What I call it is my little heartbeat exercise. So if your emotional connection is flatlined, start the little heartbeat. It's ask your partner about something that made them proud, something that caused them pain, and then something that gave them pleasure. And what your role is validate them in their pride, right? So, hey, babe, good job. I'm super proud of you. You're amazing. I'm proud to be your partner. All the validation, right? Give them props. And then with the pain, being able to also, like you said, exercise that muscle that you could hear what gave your partner pain without making it about you, without, going into a shame spiral or, getting defensive, being able to listen and hold that pain. And so again, I encourage couples to practice it every day, because the pain today it might be a headache, right? Oh, your wife's like, oh, I've had a headache all day. And then you just provide care, right? What can I do? I'm sorry to hear that. What do you
Gonna
need?
get you something, gonna get you an S10, you need something.
Exactly. And the same then is going to be, it's going to be the same skill if she comes to you with emotional pain. Like, hey, earlier today you said you would text me back and you never texted me back and it hurt my feelings. Again, it's the same thing. I'm so sorry to hear that. What can I do to fix it? Is there anything that you need? Can I give you a hug? Can I give you a kiss? Should we go for a walk together? Let's sit on the patio and have a bottle of wine. It's the same skill of providing care and empathy. And then the pleasure thing, again, having a romantic relationship, making sure that you stay connected in the space of desire, sharing pleasure with each other, especially when life happens, you've got kids, you end up, what I notice is a lot of couples just end up talking about logistics. Hey, do you take out the trash? Hey, do you remember to take the kid to the thing? And you forget to connect around things that give you pleasure. So that's the last little, beat of the heartbeat, is that connector of being able to check in with your partner. Hey, did anything give you pleasure today? And if not, let's do something pleasurable together. And it might be as simple as, let's watch a show that we enjoy. Let's cuddle in bed. Let me rub your head. Whatever it is that then brings you together in that pleasure space. And it doesn't always have to be sexual, but something pleasurable that, again, reminds your bodies that you pleasure each other and that you share that connection. That's not just, oh yeah, we're roommates. I have kids and I'm business and I'm life, right?
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Can you, from your perspective, do you think that individual therapy can be just as beneficial for a couple's overall relationship health?
I think it could be very, very effective in helping people figure out who they want to be in their relationship, right? Because I noticed a lot of people just end up in relationships without, like you said, that kind of intentionality of, what am I doing here? What role am I playing? And how invested am I? And I think individual therapy can really help to illuminate some of that. And also, a lot of us grew up in homes or had previous relationships that maybe caused us pain, trauma, attachment injuries. And so individual therapy can also help you understand how that is impacting, your patterns in your relationship today. So.
Got it. Does couples therapy reinforce gender roles? Where do you stand on that perspective?
I'd hope so, because again, what my perspective in working with any couple is, your relationship is unique to you. Like, I think everybody deserves a bespoke relationship, right? It's custom made to you. You don't get a one size fits all. So I would say if you go to a therapist that tries to say, oh, one size fits all, these are the rules for men and these are the rules for women, maybe it won't really meet your needs. So, I'm an advocate for your relationship has to be bespoke to meet your specific, custom, unique needs. And of course, I think everybody deserves that, especially, like, look at your audience, like the elite, like, come on, you deserve the best, and the best can only be yours. You don't get one off the rack.
That's right. Is couples therapy culturally sensitive? How do you navigate that, right? So as a Latino man, right, that's a big, like, we're very machismo, right? And it's like, oh, a man is, this and that. How do you navigate that as a first of all, you're biracial. So you're dealing, I would imagine your house must have been really interesting. You have different cultural values, right? How do you as a therapist manage that where you have maybe a biracial couple and you got one really macho guy, right? And then a woman's like, hey, we got to let go of that shit and we got to go and we got to work on this thing, right? And so how do you as a therapist navigate those cultural, and do they still exist? I would suppose they still do.
Absolutely. They still exist. Absolutely. And, it is kind of a balance between, what you were taught versus what you actually believe. And I think that's part of kind of the parsing out, right? Is a lot of people end up, especially like you said, if you grew up in a culture that had very strict rules for how a man or a woman should be, often what I noticed in doing couples therapy is people are just playing out the scripts that they were given. And when I actually ask them, like, is that really what you believe? It kind of is that light bulb moment of like, oh, actually, kind of like your therapist did for you. It's like, wait a minute, is that really what you believe, or is that what you were taught? And just having that, like, oh, I actually have choice. I could choose to, express this, maybe this masculinity in a slightly different way that is more me and not so much what I was supposed to be, which didn't, yeah. So I think that's the cultural piece. And honestly, working with multiracial couples, they do have to, in some ways, they have a leg up. Because I talk about it in my book too, that when couples assume that they are similar in culture, often they set themselves up for miscommunications, because every single person, no matter where they were raised or what culture they were raised in, got a specific message that might be slightly different than somebody else who even grew up next door to them.
100%. Doc, is there anything that you can share with us that you might have maybe haven't shared with us? One really good, strong strategy that you maybe didn't get to share with us that would bring a tremendous amount of value to our listeners that maybe want to get in a relationship or are in a relationship. What would that be?
Honestly, the first thing that popped up for me is the differences in desire. So there's spontaneous and responsive desire. So when it comes to a sexual connection in the couples, I also provide sex therapy for couples. And that is something that, I think when we're younger or when hormones are raging, in our society, we kind of elevate the idea of spontaneous desire, right? It's like in the movies, you see somebody across the bar, sparks fly, suddenly you're having this like crazy, magnetic chemistry, and it's spontaneous, and nobody had to do any work for any of that to happen, right? But in a long-term relationship, really cultivating responsive desire of, pleasure comes first and then arousal happens, rather than waiting for arousal and then pleasure to happen. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah.
So pleasure comes first and then arousal. How do you do that? Give us some strategies how to do that.
So it really is about setting up the environment. So I talk about, if you're hungry, you rely on spontaneous desire, right? So it's like, you're hungry, I'll eat whatever. I'll eat a can of beans. Whereas if you're not, you're like not super hungry yet, but your partner's like, let me cook for you. They turn on some music. They start, stirring up, frying some things that start smelling really good. They pour you a glass of wine. So it's really about setting up the context, and you start experiencing pleasure. Like, ooh, that smells nice. That music is good. That candle, and then you start experiencing pleasure, and then the arousal starts to happen. And honestly, so one of the pieces of research that I used in the book and that I found when it comes to spontaneous versus responsive desire is a lot more women identify as having responsive desire, right? So it's kind of like the preheating the oven metaphor, right? You got to preheat the oven before it's hot enough to get to where you want to go. And that's kind of, with the spontaneous, a lot more men identify as having spontaneous desire. And so then you put these two people in a relationship, and this is where I see a lot of couples frustrated with the desire discrepancy, where the woman is saying maybe like, my partner only touches me when he's wanting to have sex, whereas I need a little bit more warm up. And, the man getting then frustrated that, okay, I feel like she needs all this stuff. All I want is to feel desired. And so being able to talk about, look, there are two types of desire. There's the spontaneity of arousal, right? That just happens. And then there's you need to cultivate an environment of pleasure, and then the arousal starts to happen. And, these are both valid, and you need to be able to have the skills to do both if you're going to cultivate a connection.
Perfect. That's really sound, good, practical and tactical advice. I think for us men, we need things like this. Like, hey, we need coaching like this, like really logical coaching. Like, hey, you need to do this and this. And this. And I think you find that. Is that what you find when you're dealing with men? Like, hey, tell me what to do next. Like that was like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. What do I do next?
Absolutely. And that's part of why, with writing this book, it's called Strong Relationship Field Guide, because I really wanted to make it like a field guide that you could open it to any point and like, there's an exercise, there's a strategy, there's a communication skill, there's a tool, there's a diagram of, the window of tolerance, there's the emotion wheel, there's, this communication skill that you can immediately apply into your life. Because absolutely, I think, men, they're like, okay, I hear the background, I hear the reasoning, give me the tool.
Give me the thing. Yeah, we want the thing. Like, okay, what do I say? What do I do? Tell me what to do. I'll go and put this to work right now. Where most of us are doers. Most men, we just want to know how to do it. It's not that easy for us, right? This other stuff. It's for the emotional stuff. You women just know, like, something's wrong. I was talking to to one of my employees the other day, and this actually came up, and we were like, I was sharing with them that I don't understand how sometimes women say, I just feel like having a good cry. And she was there. She was like, you mean to tell me you never feel that? I was like, no, I don't feel that. I don't know what that is. But my wife has told me she just feels like having a good cry. And we can't relate. Like, it's not a natural thing for us men, but that's like a thing for women. And she was expressing what that was like, hey, just want to let all the emotions out. Like emptying a cup. She was kind of painting the picture to us. And I was like, no, that I can't. She was like, when I have a big problem, I want to get to doing and fixing. That's my cry. You want to let the emotions out. We want to just go start figuring things out and thinking, what's next? What's the next move? So we're just different. We need tactics. We need tactics. We need,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I also notice is, a lot of men, they want to be better partners. They want the good relationship. It's just, like wanting something and being capable of doing it are two different things. And I always highlight that. Like, as long as the want is there, you can develop the skills, and part of why I focus on men's work in my practice is because I see that a lot of resources, books, self-help stuff is geared to women because women tend to be the bigger consumers of that kind of stuff. But there are just as many men who want to do the work, who care about their relationships very deeply. They do want to be better partners. And there just maybe aren't as many resources that are tactical to appeal to men. And so that's part of why I wrote my book for men is, here's some tactical skills to get you from where you are to where you want to be by helping you bridge that gap of the capabilities.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Thank you for doing that. You're doing service to the world and with your book. So thank you very much. If people wanted to get a hold of you, Kristal, how do people connect with you? Where do they find you? Where do they buy your book? Where can they connect? How can they connect with you online? Where are you and how do people find you?
I'm on Instagram at ATX Therapist because I'm in Austin, Texas.
ATX?
ATX Therapist. And my website is just strong.love. And then my book is on Amazon. I also have it on Audible for people who are not big readers. They're more listeners.
Amazing. So guys, make sure you go connect with her. Thank you so much. Kristal, really appreciate you coming on and sharing this and talking about this much needed topic that needs to be discussed and giving us real life strategies that we can go and use and practical things that we can go implement in our relationships so that we can get better. Make sure you guys pick up her book, connect with her on IG and check out her website. It's all going to be in the show notes for you guys. Thank you, Kristal. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.